Welcome to the Practical Growth Podcast. I'm your host, E.B. Johnson, top writer on Medium.com, published author, and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. You've landed on the podcast that takes you on a journey into the heart of relationships and self-discovery. This is a must listen for those who are ready to overcome their toxic relationships and their toxic patterns. You can expect real talk, practical guidance, and raw and relatable guests that you'll be talking about for weeks. Let's get into it.
Oh boy. It's going to be a bloodbath this week, I think. Hello again, my lovelies. Yes, that's right. We are back at it again with a new episode. And I already know that this one's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, but somebody's got to say it. And, hey, why not me? Before we get into that, though, this is last call. The last summer session of my 8-week private coaching program is going to be closing soon. I have one spot left in that program. So if you would like to snatch up that lucky spot, start working through your narcissistic abuse patterns, your toxic relationship patterns, if you're just trying to build self-esteem and a better life, reprogram your beliefs, reprogram your behaviors, reprogram the way you think and feel for yourself, then this is the program for you. You can apply by going to therealebjohnson.com, and then you just click on working with me. You'll find the application right there. It's real quick, just a few simple questions, and then we'll find out if you are a good fit. Now, this program is limited. It's not for everybody. It's for people who are serious about taking action right now in their lives, people who want to stop feeling crappy, who want to stop waking up in the morning with no energy and no optimism and no love and no hope. It's for people that are really, really ready to dive into the deep end and shift the way they're living. So again, if you're interested in applying for that last spot, if you want to snap it up and make it yours, then head to therealebjohnson.com/working with me. All right. I know you're dying. To know what we are going to be talking about today. So brace yourselves. Because some of you aren't going to like this. Today, we're talking about toxic spirituality. But more than that, we are talking about how toxic spirituality, these crystal sister trends that are happening on TikTok, these endless sea of I'm the best tarot readers, these practices, many of these new age spiritual practices that have gained so much popular in the mainstream in the last decade or so, they reinforce narcissistic beliefs and narcissistic behaviors. And this isn't just an observation I've made, okay? This is a bona fide study-backed fact, okay? Toxic spirituality. We're going to break it down, see what it's all about, and I'm going to give you the warning signs that could indicate that you're leaning into narcissism and not some big awakening. So what is it? What am I talking about? What am I talking about when I say toxic spirituality? Am I saying that all spiritual practices are toxic? Why would they be dangerous? Like, why would, someone sitting on the internet and talking about their crystals make them dangerous to you or to I? And more than that, how could leaning into so many of these Eastern-based New Age spiritual practices promote narcissism? That seems a bit counterintuitive, right? Absolutely not. Toxic spirituality is exactly what it says on the tin, right? They're these new age beliefs that kind of center the believer or the user of them at the center. It's all the rage, and it's all about these kinds of superficial commercial aspects as well, right? It's about having all the books, make sure you're buying the right decks of cards, make sure you're buying the right crystals, wearing the right colors, that you're falling into the right cliques and clubs and, book groups. In a lot of ways, this kind of new rage, this new spiritual dominion that we're seeing in trends and fads, it's kind of like the new whitewashed, colonized meditation version of a summer revival, right? These people who fly off to go and stay in spaces where indigenous people used to live before they were forced out, to sing songs in teepees that they don't know the meaning of, that they don't know the importance of historically or spiritually, so that they can take a lot of Instagram worthy pictures and talk about how great they are on the internet, and then tell everyone else how great and elevated they are, while not really doing anything but fluffing up their own egos and lightening their wallets. This new age spirituality has very little to do with making the planet a better place and everything to do with super centering the individual, enforcing these hyper individualized and therefore narcissistic behaviors and outlooks into the world. This I am the main character of this story, and I am the center of the universe, and I am a god, and me, in a very unhealthy way, which when you step back and look at the bigger picture, does nothing but make the world worse around them. This toxic spirituality is dangerous. It's so dangerous for a few reasons, okay? And it builds up, but just follow me here. First of all, more than anything else, it perpetuates toxic and outdated belief systems, especially in terms of gender, sexuality, and relationships. If you're on TikTok and you've even just like glanced past this space, then you will have seen this. All of these divine feminine and divine masculine coaches who get online and tell women that their place is to surrender to men, and that men, their role is to dominate the household and to provide for the woman who is to cook, clean, and bear children. A lot of this toxic spirituality has just been co-opted by the current power structures that be to reinforce those same outdated beliefs and systems that have led to all this chaos and all this conflict and all this pain that we live in the middle of already. It's completely detached from true human behavior and human reality. Next, this toxic spirituality distracts. Okay, it distracts everyone. It keeps them in this zenned out, blissful state in which they're not engaging. They're just focused on buying their crystals and doing their meditations. Meanwhile, the people that they vote into office are decimating the planet, decimating communities, and ensuring that children are not going to have a planet that they can live on without drowning or frying to death. Beyond that, it also has been co-opted for commercial benefit. Most of this toxic spirituality stuff, most of any spirituality stuff that you encounter today, the vast majority of it in the West is all about buy. You've got to buy these books to unlock these secrets. You've got to buy the phone so that you can record the thing or do the seminars. You've got to pay for the seminars. You've got to pay to travel to the seminars. You've got to buy the clinics. You've got to do all of these things. Buy the crystals, buy the medicines, buy the herbs, buy the altar goods. There's so many purchases. It's been completely taken over by the West and turned into just another economy. And that same commercialism of toxic spirituality is also done at a detriment to the cultures who founded the original beliefs, right? So much of this toxic New Age spirituality is based on Eastern beliefs and indigenous Western beliefs. And then big corporations come in here, or, you know, very people who have benefited from the current systems, they come in and they take it over and they warp it and they twist it to kind of fit their old archaic Western Christian beliefs, and then they repackage it and they sell it on, and they hurt these cultures. They'll go and mine. They'll mine crystals in places out of these communities to the detriment of these places. They will go into indigenous lands where indigenous people used to hold sacred activities and experiences on those lands, and they will kick them out, and they will start their own little communities and groups in that land, and then also use completely warped and twisted beliefs, hurting the indigenous people in those communities. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the worst thing which underlies this, and I say it's the worst thing because this factor alone makes sure that all the other stuff I just talked about keeps happening, okay? And that is this toxic spirituality promotes full-blown narcissism. Full-blown narcissism. It creates full-blown narcissists who destroy their relationships, their families, and the world around them. And then also, these blissed-out, narcissistic citizens feed into the continued destruction of indigenous cultures, and they don't care because they're narcissists and they only see their experiences, and they lack empathy for those who are caused suffering by their new pastime. And that same narcissism, these delusional beliefs, this delusional idea that whatever I think is fact and true, okay, which is very much enforced in toxic spirituality, all of that also feeds these outdated beliefs, like these really sexist, and I say that, they are disgusting sexists. These coaches who get on here, they get on their podcast, they get on TikTok, they get on Instagram, and they tell people like, you are a woman, so you are divine feminine. So you must surrender to a man and give him children and make him food and clean his house. sexist. And this kind of crap can't be broken down because narcissists are delusional. And once they form a belief, they will die on that belief, because to admit that they were wrong is to admit that they are flawed and that they are human. So how then? Okay, it seems like big words. It seems ridiculous, right? Like, I'm basically pointing at toxic spirituality as one of the pillars that will bring down society, okay, along with like social media and government and everything else. How could it possibly? How could these little white girl gurus and teal swans possibly bring down society with their spirituality? First, you need to understand that, at least in terms of the United States government, they've been doing research on narcissism and narcissistic behavior since before World War II. They noticed all the way back in the 60s, after more than 2 decades of doing these studies on narcissism in the American population, that the more narcissistic the society became, that the more narcissism was found in any society, the worse that society became. Those people started to hate education. They hated knowledge. They became less intelligent. Their communities became rife with conflict. Their personal relationships and family units fell apart because of all the toxicity and the conflict and the mental and emotional abuse. It also completely deadened altruism in those societies. The higher narcissism concentrations got, the less altruism there was in those societies, the worse their economic standing became. This is in studies. You can go and look this up. The more narcissistic a society becomes, the worse the citizens are economically. Okay? They fall apart economically because they don't have education. They don't have healthy relationships. They can't support each other. They become hyper-individualized and isolated. That is the background that will help you understand how toxic spirituality reinforces this narcissism, okay? And why it is so bad that this toxic spirituality is spreading through society and creating generations and generations of full-blown narcissists who think they are the main character of the entire world. Like, they think that they are special, so special that, like, the universe is speaking to them alone to give them the secrets of life. Just them alone, because they're that special. This toxic, horrible, poisonous, corrosive form of pseudo-spirituality, that's what it really should be called, is pseudo-spirituality. It reinforces narcissism by putting the believer at the center of all dialogue in a godlike way. Okay? Whether you are some like shit-hot tarot reader and you think that I am so good and I'm the only one on this planet that the universe can honestly and faithfully speak through to reveal the secrets of both myself and everyone else who comes before me. It creates, and it's the same, you see that with astrologists as well. You'll see a lot of these people who are really, really, really into astrology, believing that they have all the secrets to the universe, that they know all things, and it's a dangerous assumption to make as a human when you assume that you know all things, because you don't. You can't. Next, this toxic spirituality inherently creates a need for outward validation. And what is central to narcissism? Insecure people who are terrified of those insecurities, so therefore they need the constant validation and self-soothing of others in order to feed their supply, in order to keep that mask up, to keep that wall up around the insecurities that they don't want anyone else to see. Okay, this really nasty, negative, false spirituality feeds this idea that you should always be bettering yourself. But how do you figure out if you're better? You go out into the world, you form relationships with people, you go after new jobs, you do things with other people. And if those things go well, then you must be getting better, right? It doesn't call for you to internally validate your journey. This toxic spirituality, it very much centers this idea that you should be projecting outwardly what's going on with you internally so that people can clap and parade you and say, "Ooh, you're so good. You've become such a nice person. You're so healed. You're so elevated. You're so ascended and awake." And it's absolute bullshit, because all of that comes from ego. Last but not least, this toxic spirituality reinforces all of this disgusting narcissistic behavior because it promotes hyper-individualized thought to the exclusion and detriment of others. It's a great thing to believe in yourself, to love yourself, to be willing to set boundaries, even if that means being entirely alone because of it, right? Because some of us grow up in places where being authentically yourself means being authentically alone. And sometimes that's what has to be done. But in toxic spirituality, this hyper individualization is very much aligned with like, I think this thing and I've meditated on it, so it's fact. And if you don't see reality the way I see reality, then you don't see reality and you can get out of my life, which is nuts, right? Because we all have our own reality. Okay. And this doesn't touch on like abusers. This touches on this culture, this subculture of toxic spirituality, in which, again, these people are gods. And when you become a god, you think that you know all things. You think that you are omnipotent. And that treads the line of narcissists who live in entire delusions and who insist that everyone around them lives within those same delusions or they get punished. Now, I know that some of you are going to be listening to this and you're going to be feeling very insecure. You're like, oh my God, I just bought that giant crystal and it's sitting in my window and it was really making me feel good. And now I think that maybe I am full of shit. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying, okay? I'm not discounting all of these spiritual practices and ideas and beliefs, and I'm not discounting anything that makes you feel good. But all the same, we do have to be aware when these popular mainstream beliefs, trends are preying on some of our weaker instincts. So if you want to be sure that you are not allowing these, like these divine coaches to prey on your weaknesses, then here are 6 signs that you can look for, which might indicate that you're really just leaning into narcissism versus becoming a truly whole and fulfilled person. Number 1, stop and look at your practices if you're into this spirituality, or look at the practices of anyone who pushes this kind of spirituality, this new age spirituality. Look at the big picture and now ask yourself, is this about being superior to someone else? Because that's one of the biggest signs that your new awakening, this kind of new spiritual awakening stuff, is all a load of crap, and that it's your ego driving it and not an actual desire for peace or change or whatever it is. So many people in this spirituality world, it's all about flexing. It's all about showing that you are in a place above others. You are elevated above the people who just aren't quote unquote awake enough. All of your big epiphanies get put on show. You're on Instagram every day talking about, you know what I've realized? The meaning to life is found, all of this kind of stuff. You don't eat, sleep, or breathe without broadcasting it to the world to show them that you're doing bigger, better things than them. These kind of fake awakenings have no true value. They're superficial and they're geared toward making other people feel bad, which is what a narcissist does. A narcissist builds themselves up only so that they can make others feel bad. And that is not spirituality. That's narcissism. Number 2, I want you to question and look at how often you genuinely give praise to others only for wanting to praise them, not because you have some other motives. And then I also want you to look at how often do you do that? Do you praise people more than you put them down, or do you criticize and put people down more than you try to build them up? This is something that you find so much in toxic spirituality, and it's one of the things that feeds this narcissism. Okay? These new age narcissists struggle to give anyone else praise because what? It's their narcissism. To lift others up, to say that someone else might be doing as good or better than them, is to put themselves in a lower place, to make themselves feel insecure. And a narcissist is not going to do that. They can't say anything fully positive about other people because it's personalization, right? To say something positive about someone else is to say something negative about themselves. So they're not just going to build people up because they want to see other people be happy, because that makes the whole freaking world a better place. They go around doing everything they can to criticize everyone and everything around them in an effort to feel better about themselves in a totally superficial way. So look out for this, not only in your spiritual gurus, but notice this in yourself. Number 3, you really have to be aware and cautious about a detachment from reality. Because a lot of this toxic spirituality, it's one thing to teach you to focus on building power within yourself so that you can then create power for others in the future. But toxic spirituality doesn't do that. A lot of it is just completely detached from reality. It tells you to just check out, stop paying attention to what's going on, the suffering of others, and only focus on yourself. Only your struggles matter. I hate to break it to you, but we are human beings living in a society. The vast majority of us do not live off-grid up a hill on our own, right? We live in a society. So as great as it is to consider yourself and to center yourself, which can be important at times, you also have to consider the big picture and the fact that the world's on fire and people keep getting elected to pour gasoline on that fire, and they keep stealing from people who have no power, and they keep stealing resources from people who just need them to survive. All of these things are very real. And if you check out and pretend that only your spirituality and your crystal garden matters, then you allow these people at the top to continue to destroy the world. And you don't actually create anything that's going to make the future better or that's going to stop these people. Your woke spirituality is no good without action in the outside world. It's no good if it doesn't also encourage improving your community in a way that is both realistic and still attached to respecting yourself. If you think that you just sitting in your house, meditating 24/7, 365, and only talking about yourself on Instagram all day long is changing the world, you are a joke. Unless it is a part of a long-term plan to put yourself in a position in which you can actually affect the community around you, you are a joke and a narcissist putting yourself on show. Number 4, you better look out for superficial sacrifices. If you want to avoid being a full-blown narcissist with a really nice collection of astrology books and crystals, you better look out for superficial sacrifices, because the narcissist on a journey of awakening is someone who loves to make a show of the sacrifices that they make in order to get where they are. Yeah? Covert narcissists love to display the sacrifices they're making in order to achieve enlightenment. They like to use those sacrifices, right? We use the bunny ears there, sacrifices, as an attempt to gain superiority over people, right? So they don't actually care about the animals that they're saving being vegan. It's all just about telling non-vegans how vegan they are so that those non-vegans feel bad about themselves and feel as though they are beneath this other person who watched a Paul McCartney video. It's all about the intention behind these so-called sacrifices. It's fine if you are genuinely cutting something out of your life in an effort to make it better or to make the world a better place. It's something different when you want to use it to control others or to lend a greater deal of validity to your constantly negative and criticizing behavior. Number 5, who is your spiritual awakening journey about? Who is it about? Genuine question you need to ask yourself, because the narcissistic person is only ever going to answer one thing. Well, it's about me. It's about me, and it's about making my life better. Wrong. Completely ego-driven and narcissistic. Yes, you should be the focus of improving your life. Yes, improving yourself should be a focus of your life, but it should not be about you all the time. Your journey to becoming a better person shouldn't just be about having peace in your life. It should also be about affecting peace in other people's lives, in knowing that when I become a better person, I make the immediate world around me a better place, and I affect so many other people in better ways. And if I affect them in better ways, they will affect other people in better ways. It's a big, giant cycle. But when you're chasing enlightenment only for yourself in order to have some kind of bragging rights or to, kind of sling your ego around, you don't make room for other people. You don't make room for other people. It just becomes about you all the time. And then that damages so many relationships around you and changes the actual beliefs of people around you. Last but not least, number 6, ask yourself how much emotional intelligence is being built into your spiritual practices. If your spiritual practices or the spiritual gurus that you follow are not teaching you emotional intelligence, how to communicate with all of your emotions, including anger, including sadness, including anxiety and fear, if they're not teaching you that, if they are not teaching you empathy, intelligent empathy, not becoming a doormat, not surrendering, true empathy, which means seeing someone, understanding, feeling for them, and not allowing it to fly. True spiritual awakening, true awareness, if you're not a spiritual person, comes when you learn how to give and care to others as much as you do for yourself. It's finding the balance in those two things. It's being able to set a boundary and telling a toxic person to screw off. And it is also being able to open the door and scoop someone up and say, I help you. I am here for you. I'm going to support you because I see that you're hurting and you're in need. I understand. I feel your pain. Any journey whose sole goal is to put you at the top of the heap or to punish others, it's a journey that's going to be short-lived and miserable, and it's certainly not spiritual. But you will find a big old ego death on the other side of it. So what is your spiritual journey looking like? Have you fallen prey to this toxic spirituality, this negative spirituality, this sexist, manipulative, co-opted commercial spirituality that everyone else is marketing as true faith? You will continue to fall into traps until you learn to see the bigger picture, until you set honest intentions for yourself, your practices, and your future, and you learn how to find a middle way. You cannot move from a place of desperate superiority and shift to a place of loving empathy overnight. You're going to have to learn some hard truths about yourself. Moving toward enlightenment only for likes is a hollow pursuit. You're going to end up miserable. And like I said, you're going to end up going off a cliff into absolute ego death when you realize that everything you've been dedicating to yourself to is an absolute lie. Stop stop buying into these flimsy masquerades. Your enlightenment is not on showcase for the world to see. It's no one's business. Literally no one's business. Inviting other people into your betterment is muddying the water. Waking up requires you to figure out who you are. Then you've got to deep dive into emotional intelligence and see how that person has been shaped by and how that person relates to others. Stop pretending to be something that you aren't. Stop trying to follow these little Polly Pocket influencers. You're good enough as you are, and your journey is entirely and authentically your own. It doesn't need to be a grand spectacle. There's nothing special about any one of us. And then there's something special about every single one of us. That's what you always have to remember. You have something special to offer, but it's nothing that a million other people won't have to offer too. And all of those things are valuable. We're each like a little neuron in the body. We each have a very important job to do, and it's linked to the jobs of everyone else around us, and it's all linked together. Yes, you have to take care of you. You have to be central to your story, but you also have to be able to see the realities and stories of others and understand that your reality, your story, your experience as it is, your spirituality, your beliefs are not the beliefs of others, and they don't have to be. That's okay. They're on their own planet in their own reality, and occasionally you guys will collide, but that's it. Okay? It's still theirs. So focus on being a better person for you, and focus on being a better person so that you leave the world around you a better place. Align your intentions with the good and compassionate part of yourself. There's room for all of us to be good and to have our experiences the way we need to have them. Accept those parts of yourself which are mediocre, which are average. Love them. Revel in them. Stop thinking you have to prove some big enlightenment or awakening. It's just not true. True awakening happens when we learn how to love both ourselves and others. increase your altruism, and find enlightenment through giving more to yourself and of yourself. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you found something in this episode which was super helpful or, at least a little bit useful. If you loved it, why not consider leaving a quick 5-star review on Apple Podcasts? I know you guys get tired of hearing me say it, but hey, you get a free ebook on the other side, and there is nothing better than free. That's what happens. So go over to Apple Podcasts, leave a quick little 5-star review if you loved the show. Let them know what you liked and send me a screenshot of that. As soon as I've got it, I'll send you a free copy of one of my ebooks. It's really that simple and that straightforward. That's how we do things here. So thank you again to everyone who listens, who reads me over on medium.com, who is showing up for my live TikTok coaching, and who's liking the videos and sharing them and commenting. There are way too many of you, almost 50,000 now, to keep up with, and I'm grateful for every single one of you. So keep going, keep your heads up. I'm rooting for every single one of you. Keep moving forward. Until next week, bye-bye.